Hi, I'm Elaine from Elaine's Sweet Life. Today I'm going to show you how to sew my Roo Art Pouch. Let's sew! Okay, so we're going to start with the internal zipper pocket. It is interfaced on the wrong side and it sits horizontally, so the long edge is the top and bottom of the pocket. So we're going to make a line 2 1/4 inches from the bottom edge of the pocket. Okay, and then we're going to make a second line 3/8 of an inch above the line we've just drawn, and then from the two sides we're going to measure 1 inch in to create a rectangular box. Then halfway across the width of the box we're going to draw a second horizontal line, and we want to stay about 3/8 of an inch away from each of the sides when we draw that line. Then from the end of the line you'll draw a line straight up into the corner on each side, making 2 little triangles. Now we'll take the main panel of the lining. Right, then we will take our lining panel and we're going to follow this line formed by these kind of wings, and we're going to measure 1/4 of an inch above that line. We're going to draw a line across. Then we'll just fold it in half and finger press just to find the center, and we'll do the same for our pocket piece. Just fold it in half vertically and finger press to find the center. Now we're going to line up the bottom of the zipper pocket piece along the line we've drawn there, and make sure your finger pressed centers match up as well, and clip it in place. Now we're going to sew around this rectangular box. Start in the middle of one of the long lines, don't start in the corner, and when you get to the corner you'll do needle down and pivot on that point, and make sure you get nice square corners. And make sure you backstitch. Needle down and pivot. Pivot. Needle down and pivot. And backstitch to finish. Now we want to cut along this line drawn in the center. You can do this with scissors. I like to use my rotary cutter just for this long straight line, cutting through all layers. And then you'll clip along those triangles and into the corner. Make sure you don't snip through your stitches in the 4 corners. And don't worry if you do clip the thread by mistake, you can always go around again and fix it. I like to check from both sides to make sure I have got all the way into that corner through all the layers. Okay, that's good. Now we want to tuck this pocket through the hole, taking it to the back and press in place. But before I do that, I'll just press these seams, and it helps when you're turning through. You can tuck it through. kind of roll those seams open. And give them a good press. Turn it over and press from the other side as well. Okay. Alright, now we're going to take our shorter zipper, 7-inch zip. Mine's a bit longer. I'll just trim it to fit. And you want your double-sided tape. And you're gonna put double-sided tape on the right side of the zipper, so you've got right side up, and right on the edges of the zipper tape. Make sure it's stuck well. Now, if you're using a longer zipper like me, make sure that your zipper pull is in the actual zipper area of the box. And we are going to stick it on the back of the lining panel. So your lining panel is face up, your pocket is face down, and you want to make sure that the gap between the teeth and the edge of this box is even at the top and the bottom. And again, make sure your zipper pull is in that box. Make sure it's stuck well. Now we're going to sew around the zipper, and we're going to start on this edge with the zipper behind your presser foot so that it doesn't get in the way of your presser foot. And you're going to top stitch, I use 3.5 for the stitch length, around that box, sewing away from the zipper pull and back again. And don't forget your back stitch. And again, we're going to needle down and pivot at the corners. Be careful as you're stitching over the zipper. Go slowly. Right, before we reach the zipper pull, needle down, lift the presser foot, and then you can just zip it out the way. Go. And then you can finish your seam without the zipper pull getting in the way. Again, just take it slow as you sew over the zipper. And backstitch once you reach the end. Okay. If your zipper is longer than the pocket panel, you can just trim it down. Careful not to actually cut your pocket panel. Now we're going to fold the top of the pocket down to meet the bottom edge. And you want to press that top crease. Then we want to press the bottom edges up by 1/4 inch. I normally actually use my mini iron, but it has decided to die. Now we're going to stitch along the two short ends of the pocket, tucking your lining panel out the way so you're not sewing through your lining panel. And you're going to stitch all the way down to the bottom over the folded ends. Don't forget to backstitch. I also like to go back over the zip a couple of times. Make sure that your folded edges stay folded. This bottom edge of the pocket we are leaving unstitched for now because the bag will be birthed through that opening. Now we're going to turn our attention to our flaps. They've been interfaced on one half, and we are just going to fold them in half lengthwise. Make sure your edges line up. Sometimes the interfacing can kind of fight you on that. Okay, and then we're going to sew down the two short ends using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then we will turn them right way around. Oh, before we do that, we want to clip the top corners at a 45-degree angle, so that's on the folded side. Turn them right side out, make sure your corners are pushed out completely. And then we are going to press them making sure these seams are properly pushed out. And that your raw edges line up. Right, now we're going to bring our lining panel back again. Now we're going to be looking at this line between the two wings, and we're going to draw a line 1/4 inch away from that edge. Then you're going to take one of your wings, keeping the raw edge facing towards the center. You're going to line that corner on the raw edge up with the corner of this box, and the top corner you're going to line up with the line you've drawn on the lining panel. I'm going to clip it in place. And then we will top stitch an 1/8 of an inch away from the edge along that short side of the flap. So we're actually attaching it at an angle on the lining. Make sure your pocket is tucked out the way. You don't want to sew through your pocket. And don't forget to backstitch. Right, make sure that your pocket is tucked out the way. You don't want to sew through your pocket. And don't forget to backstitch. Now we're going to attach the other side of the flap, and it's the same thing except now your panel gets caught up. We're going to line that bottom corner on the raw edge with the corner formed by the wing, and we want the top end of the top corner to line up on that line that we drew. So you're kind of having to twist things around a little bit. Okay, make sure that your corners are in the right places. Do the same thing on the other side of the lining panel. So we're going to draw a line 1/4 inch away from that edge. Now I like to do the pocket side first so that it's easier to tuck the pocket out the way while it's lying flatter. So with the raw edge facing towards the center, match that bottom raw edge corner with that corner, and the top corner you'll line up with the line you drew. And clip it in place and top stitch with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Out the way. Okay, and again bring that bottom corner to meet that corner and the top edge with the drawn line. Top corner, sorry. Whoops. That's now ready to be put aside. Okay, so now we're going to look at our zip. You can use a zipper tape as well, and in fact the number 5 zipper actually does work quite nicely with this pouch. But if you're using a size 3 zipper of 20 inches long, you need to remove the metal stoppers from either end of the zip. So to do that, let's just use a wire clipper tool and you're going to cut through the middle of that piece of metal on, this is the bottom stop on the closed end of the zip, and I cut it from the right side of the zip. And you just kind of grab it and cut right through it. Once that's done, it actually comes off relatively easily. Just pull it off like that. Okay. And the ones on the other end, you need to cut on the wrong side of the zipper tape. You see it's a nice solid metal piece on that side. Again, be careful not to cut your fingers. You just want to cut through it. And then again, the two pieces come off relatively easily. These ones are slightly more tricky because they're a bit smaller. There we go. Okay, do the other one. Clip through and pull little pieces off. Right, then you can throw those away. Carefully, because if they get on the floor, they will go into your toe. Right, next we want, just before we take the zipper pull off the zip, we want to mark the side that the zipper pull actually comes off of. So I just do a little arrowhead on either end of the tape, right at the end where the zipper, past where the zipper ends, the zipper teeth end. And then I'm going to remove the zipper head and I'm going to put that aside where I'm not going to lose it. On the wrong side of the zipper tape, we are going to mark the center of the zipper. So if you're using the 20-inch zipper, we will mark it at 10 inches. Just there. Make sure you mark both halves and on the back of the zipper. Okay. Now we will get our lining panel back and we want to mark the center of these sides. You can either fold it in half or you can use your pattern pieces. And just mark the center. And you want to make sure you do it on both sides. And then you're going to do the same for your main panel. This has been basted to the foam. And we're going to mark the center. Mark on the wrong side because it's just generally more visible. Okay, so you can put the lining aside for a minute. Turn your main panel right side up and you're going to take one of your pieces of zipper tape and you're going to put it right side of the zip to the right side of the panel. So the zipper teeth will be at the bottom and the zipper teeth will be towards you with the edge of the tape with no teeth. You will align that edge with the raw edge of your main panel and make sure your center marks are aligned. So clip the center and then you can work your way across. When you get to these bends, just kind of ease the zipper around the bend, around the curve. Oops. ease the zip around the curve. Okay, and then we are going to stitch it on with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that is the seam allowance that is just slightly less than a 1/4 inch. I'm also going to use my zipper foot for this. Okay, make sure your stitch length is set for regular sewing, not top stitching. So for me that is 2.5. So again, we're going to be stitching with a scant 1/4 inch. That's just a little less than a 1/4 inch. And don't forget to backstitch. Now we're going to do exactly the same for the other side. So you need to make sure your zipper is right side down and with the teeth away from the edge. So we're going to line up the side of the zipper tape with no teeth with the raw edge of the outer panel. Make sure our center marks line up perfectly. And just easing it around these curves. I'll stitch it on again with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we are going to just clip the zipper tape a bit to help it lie a bit more flat. So we don't want to clip through any of the fabric, just the zipper tape itself. And not all the way up to the stitching, so we don't want our zipper tape to start fraying. That just allows it to sit more flat. All 4 of the curves. Now we're going to take our lining panel and we're going to do similar. So with the lining panel right side facing the right side of the outer panel, make sure your center marks align and clip that same top edge. So you've got the lining facing the outer panel and the zipper tape sandwiched in between them. Now you'll notice when you get to the curves that the curve in the lining is not quite the same as the curve of the outer panel. So you've just got to kind of ease it round and it will fit. want to make sure we've got nice snug lining on the inside. You'll notice your lining is also slightly shorter than the outer panel, so you'll have a little bit of outer panel showing, and that is correct. Just keep clipping, and you want to be quite fussy and quite accurate, making sure that your edges line up nicely. Again, you can see that the lining is just slightly shorter than the outer. Now we're going to stitch it on, but we're going to use a full 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, don't forget to backstitch. And now we're going to clip the other side. This side's a little bit more tricky because this has got the flaps attached to it. But same thing, you're going to match your center marks up. Okay. So exactly as before, the curves are slightly different. And make sure your zipper lies flat underneath. The teeth are pushed well out of the way of the seam. I'm not so good at clipping left-handed. Make sure the zipper lies flat and out the way of the seam allowance. Okay, and that again will be stitched with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we are going to trim this excess bit of foam that sticks out here. You want to cut just the foam and just that bit, that kind of corner that sticks out. So you're kind of grading it a bit. You notice I have kind of snipped that initial basting seam, but that's okay as long as you're not affecting your seams from installing the zipper. Now we're just going to snip the curves, making sure you don't snip your stitching. Again, I have snipped that outside line, which was the basting stitch, but the 2 seams we've done to sew the zip in are fully intact. Now we're going to turn the whole thing right side out again, just through the side. I'm going to kind of roll the seams and pull them back away from the zipper. And then we'll give them a press. Now we are going to top stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the zipper, and I'm going to change back to my regular presser foot, and you want to make sure that both the outer and lining are pulled away from the zipper, and change your stitch length to 3.5 for your top stitching. So use a longer stitch for top stitching. As you get near that zipper pull, you just need to move it out of the way from the inner zip. And then we're going to do the same for the other side of the zip. And now we will replace the zipper, the zipper pull. Okay, so we're going to find the side of the zip that we marked with our little arrowheads. That's the side that we're going to put our zipper pull back on. Okay, so when you line your zipper tab up, we're going to put the zipper on to the side that we've marked our V's, our little arrowheads. You're going to make sure that your corners of the pouch are reasonably well lined up. So if you line your zipper up and they're reasonably well lined up, they don't have to be absolutely exact, you're fine. If you find there's quite a big difference on the pouch, you need to adjust for it. So line the ends up. It's a bit easier if you've used regular zip because you've got no teeth on the ends, so you can slide it on quite far before you have to worry about engaging the zip. Make sure corners are still lined up reasonably well. And then you're just going to pull your zipper up. Bring it around to the other side. Don't do it too quickly because you'll pull your zipper right off and you'll have to do it again. And just check that the other side lines up reasonably well. They don't have to be absolutely perfect. Just pretty close. Okay. And now we're going to start working on our zipper tabs. So now we're going to work on the tabs. So you'll have your fabric that looks like that. You're going to fold it in half lengthways and give it a good press. Then you will unfold it and you're going to fold each of these outer edges in towards the center, like so, and press along there. Then you're going to refold it in half, making sure your edges line up, and give it a good press. So you end up with a strap kind of piece with 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge along both long edges. So lengthen your stitch to 3.5 for top stitching. There's no need to backstitch on this particular piece because we are still going to be cutting it as well. So both long edges. Then we're going to fold that piece in half, find the center and cut it in half so you have 2 pieces. Now we're going to take our pouch again, and we want to close the zip, keep it together. So we're going to bring the sides together, pull the zip down so you can make sure you get it even. Use a longer clip. Whoops! And just get those 2 edges to lie together. And then we want to stitch that. Doesn't want to stay together. It does fight you. You could hand stitch it as well. You just want to go back and forth a couple times. Make sure that that zipper stays together. Then you're going to take one of your tabs, fold it in half so that the 2 raw edges meet, and then you're going to place it over the end of your pouch and make sure your edges line up. And what you're aiming for is that corner of the tab to meet the edge of the pouch on either side, and it should also be centered over your zipper area. You can clip it in place, and then we're going to stitch along there the regular stitch length, sewing stitch length, and an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew back again to make sure it's nice and secure. So you can see, and it's nicely centered over my zipper. I'm going to do the same on, or similar on this side. Fold the zipper tab in half so that the edges are aligned. Place it over the zip again so these corners line up with the edges, and you just got that little bit of corner on the zipper tape sticking out. Make sure it's centered over the zipper. Stitch all the way back again. Now we are going to trim this part of the zipper off in line with the tab. So you can see I've taken the ends of the zipper off, and just those 2 triangles which should mostly be wrong side up. Okay, same on this side. I'm going to cut it off in line with the end of the zipper tab. So it really isn't much that you're cutting off of the actual pouch. Okay, now we want to secure our zip, and we're going to do a bit of hand stitching. I know no one likes hand stitching, but this is an important step. This is kind of two of the last seams on this pouch that we're going to be putting, and all the layers of the pouch are sewed together, so there's quite a lot of bulk and quite a lot of layers to line up, and it's very easy for your zipper tab to end up going skew or getting caught in. And also this part of the zipper might get caught open, and you want to definitely make sure it stays closed at the end. So we're just going to put a few tacking stitches in just to make sure that it behaves itself and we get a really nice finish on our pouch. I like to use kind of a bright color, so it's really easy to see those stitches and pull them out once the pouch is constructed. So I'm just threading my needle. I use a self-threading needle, which usually makes it easier. So keep your zipper slider quite close, make sure everything stays nicely centered. I'm going to sew through the top to start with. And make sure when you do your stitches that you're pulling that zipper closed. Time there. And then I want to go about halfway down, so we're getting close to where our seam will be. Okay, make sure the zipper is pulled closed at that point. These really don't have to be neat, they are going to get pulled right out again, so the bigger and kind of messier they are, the easier they are to remove afterwards. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. You want to make sure you do sew the zipper closed, because we're actually going to be opening the zipper for the next step. So the side is just as important as the other side. Okay, make sure that your tab remains nice and centered over your zipper area. So it's performing two functions really. Keeping the zipper closed, keeping the zipper head out the way, and keeping your tab neat and aligned. So now we're going to open the zipper all the way, and very important, make sure that your zipper pocket zipper is also open, because that's where we're going to be birthing the bag, and if it's not open you're not going to be able to get into it. And now we are going to go between the lining and the outer, and we're going to turn our bag inside out again. Okay, so we've got it turned inside out again. Now we want to try and get it as flat as we can. So what we want to do is those bits where the zip are, you want them to go in, but you want this edge, this is between the outer and the lining, you want it to come out. So you've got those bits of the zipper going in, and that seam allowance pulling out. You're going to do exactly the same on the other side. Find the zipper, so keep the pocket to the lining side. You want the curves of the zipper to go in, and then you're going to pull that bit outwards. So those two corners out, the other side of the zip in, and then it forms kind of like a hexagon. So you can see it, those two pockets where the curve of the zipper is goes in, and the seam allowance, the center of the seam allowance comes out. So you have this kind of hexagon going on. So now we are going to focus on these end bits. These are the last two seams that we need to do. So working from the corner, make sure you fold properly on the corner, and then you're going to clip the foam layers so that they are aligned with each other. And you're just going to clip up to there, and then you're going to do the same on the other side. Fold it, align the straight edges, clip and clip. Then you're going to do the same for the lining. Now you've got to make sure that these flaps are aligned as well. So it's a few layers. It's the two outside layers and the two layers of flap all need to align. So you clip there. Make sure all those edges align. And clip there. And same from this side. All 4 layers aligned. And again, make sure all 4 layers align. Clip. Now we're going to clip these layers together. So you can remove the one clip and then use that one to clip all those layers together, and they should all be neatly aligned along the top. The same, you can remove one and use the other one to clip them all together. We do the same from this side. Get those edges aligned, move a clip, clip them all together. And now we can focus on the central area. So you kind of almost want to follow that line that you stitched. So you're going to be cutting the corners of that off. Just slightly. So you do need to pull it up to follow those edges, and it'll go over the zip. Now this almost forms a straight line, but not quite. So you want to make sure you follow this edge carefully, and you want to come all the way up to here. Don't get your seam allowance bigger, because then you'll be cutting the corners off of here. Make sure you clip properly at the back as well, because I can see that's kind of pulled away. So So you just want to make sure everything is aligned correctly. And you'll notice it almost forms like a V. And that is right, that is how it will work out. So you'll stitch along there and then up along there. And then you're going to be stitching with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure your stitch length is reduced if you're not stitching with your top stitching length, because that wouldn't be as secure. And make sure you back stitch. Try and leave your clips in place as long as you can. And try and keep it a straight line along that seam allowance till you get to the center of the zip, and then you'll pivot slightly. You may need to go a bit slowly over the tab and the zipper area. Just take it slow. It is quite bulky, but a domestic machine can handle it. You just want to check both sides, and then just stitch that center portion again, just to ensure everything is where it should be and that the seam is nice and secure. And then we will do exactly the same on the other side. Fold and clip. You do want to make sure that this corner folds on the actual corner. Be as accurate as you can. Okay, again we've got 4 layers to align here. Top, 2 for the flap, and then the other lining there. Make sure all 4 layers are aligned, because you don't want to miss any of those layers. Okay, once you've got all 4 of those clipped, you can add all the layers together. Be very sure that all of your layers are aligned. Okay, and then you're going to bring the focus over the zip. You do want to make sure you don't have any pleats. All your layers are nice and flat. So I do have a slight problem on this side. rather do this a few times and make sure all my layers are nice and flat inside. Otherwise you get a bit of a gather inside, which doesn't always look so nice. Okay, make sure back and front are both pulled upwards. Okay. I think I'll line this side one more time. And again, we stitch that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And again, I'm going to just stitch over the zipper area again to make sure it's secure. And just check to make sure that you've caught all the edges within the seam on both sides. Okay. So now we're going to turn it inside out. Or right side or out, I guess I should say. And we're just going to check to make sure we're happy. Oh, turn it the right way out. With how this fabric is lying in the seam. So now remember, it's not straight, it actually makes a corner, so curve it and you should have an edge without any gathers. Just check inside as well that you're happy with all your seams on the inside. Okay, check this side. It all looks good to me. Again, take it around the bend. This fabric is not the best fabric for showing it because it's got quite a lot of colors. But yeah, I'm happy with that. And the inside, I'm satisfied that all of my seams are caught. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back around the other way. And we're just going to trim a bit of bulk out of that seam. So you're going to open the seam up and we're just going to take about half the seam allowance away over the zip. I'm going to cut it into the bin. It makes a mess. And again, open this other side seam. Just pull away the top and bottom layers and you're going to cut about half the seam allowance away of that whole bulk over the foam and the zipper. So you got about half the seam allowance there. It's not a full, well, it's actually a bit more than a 1/4 inch because that always stuck out a little bit. I'm going to trim a little bit more off here. Makes a mess. So I'm happy with this one. Just a little bit more off here. Okay. Right, I can turn it back the right way. This is okay. And we're going to close the gap in the pocket. So we pressed those edges down earlier. So it's just a case of bringing those folded edges together. Always try to fold these down slightly so that they don't stick out. So you don't get any of those little raw edges sticking out on the side. Now this can be finished by hand if you prefer, but since it's inside a pocket, I'm quite happy just to top stitch it closed. So we're going to stitch that now with a 1/8 inch seam allowance, or even a little less, to close the pocket. And now we can just tuck that pocket in. Make sure those corners go in nicely. And that pocket's closed. Now we want to remove our basting stitches. So you just want to snip them, but you don't want to snip your fabric. They should come out reasonably easily. Okay. And on the other side. And then the zip can open up all the way. And now all that's left is we need to press the pouch to make it sit nice and boxy. So make sure your lining is lying flat, and then you can it goes nicely into the corners, and then kind of iron that side on the inside. Turn it around, do the same on this side. Make sure it folds nicely on the corners, and then iron the crease in. And again, iron that side because your inside will be quite rumpled from all the turning inside and outside. Then we'll focus on the corners. Now I just iron directly. I find there's enough layers and I'm not in danger of burning myself. Lots of fluff everywhere. I love this wool mat, but it can fluff a bit sometimes. Okay. And we can zip it up. Now we want to try and get a crease on the bottom, so we're going to go from the center of this tab to the center of that tab and encourage it into a central crease. And press it from both sides. these sides, if you clip them and leave them with the clips on overnight, you can get them a bit sharper. And then we want to these short edges with a bit of a crease. Ooh, it's hot. Let's get a bit of heat on them, not too much. And then you can just pinch it with your fingers. I'll do the same to this side. Just roll those seams and try and get them as sharp as you can. And just applying a little bit of heat to these. And then we have a rather lovely boxy Roo pouch. If you open it up, forms quite a lovely tray, and you have a little pocket. And there we have it. Very pretty Roo pouch.